Most people remember the Gibeonites because they deceived Israel. But that's only the beginning of the story. The deception lasted 3 days. The covenant lasted for centuries. To understand why, we have to go back to the days of Joshua. Israel had crossed the Jordan River. Jericho had fallen. Ai had been defeated. Word spread quickly throughout Canaan. The nations weren't simply afraid of Israel. They were afraid of Israel's God. Most kings gathered their armies for war, but one city chose a completely different strategy: Gibeon. The leaders of Gibeon knew they could not defeat Israel in battle, so instead of preparing weapons, they prepared a disguise. They gathered worn-out sacks, cracked wineskins, patched clothing, worn sandals, and dry, moldy bread. Everything was carefully designed to tell one convincing story. We have come from a very distant country. When they stood before Joshua, they asked for peace. Joshua and the leaders examined everything they brought. The bread looked old. The wineskins were cracked. The sandals were worn. Everything appeared genuine. But Scripture records one sentence that explains why this story unfolded the way it did. "And the men took of their victuals, and asked not counsel at the mouth of the Lord." Israel trusted what they could see, instead of asking the one who sees everything. Joshua made a covenant with the Gibeonites. He swore an oath before the Lord that they would live. 3 days later, the truth came out. The Gibeonites had not traveled from a distant land. They were neighbors. Israel had been deceived. The people became angry. They wanted to destroy Gibeon. But Joshua refused, not because he approved of the deception, but because he had already given his word before God. The covenant stood. Instead, Joshua declared that the Gibeonites would become servants. They would cut wood, carry water, and serve at the house of the Lord. Most people stop reading there. But the story isn't over. The surrounding Amorite kings heard that Gibeon had made peace with Israel. To them, Gibeon had become traitors. 5 Amorite kings united their armies and marched against Gibeon. Now think about this. Israel was suddenly preparing to fight a battle they never intended to fight, for the very people who had deceived them. Joshua could have walked away. He could have said, "You brought this on yourselves." But covenant changed everything. Joshua honored his oath. He marched his army all night to rescue Gibeon. As the battle began, the Lord fought for Israel. The enemy was thrown into confusion. Then great hailstones fell from heaven. Scripture tells us that more of Israel's enemies died from the hailstones than by the swords of Israel. Then Joshua prayed one of the boldest prayers recorded in the Bible. "Sun, stand thou still upon Gibeon." And the sun stood still. Time itself paused. One of the greatest miracles in Scripture happened while Israel was defending a covenant they never intended to make. But the story still isn't finished. Centuries later, King Saul attacked the Gibeonites. He violated the covenant Joshua had sworn generations earlier. Then, during David's reign, a famine struck Israel for 3 consecutive years. David sought the Lord, and God revealed the reason. The famine had come because Saul had broken the covenant with the Gibeonites. Think about that. Joshua was gone. Saul was gone. Generations had passed, but God still remembered the covenant. Here's the hidden pattern. The story of the Gibeonites isn't primarily about deception. It's about covenant. Israel made a serious mistake. They relied on what they could see instead of seeking God. But once they gave their word before the Lord, they honored it. And God honored it too. The same covenant that began through deception was defended in battle, confirmed by miracle, and remembered by God for generations. People may forget their promises. God doesn't. May you be like the Bereans. Search the Scriptures. Discover the truth.